Morning, everyone. I'm County Councillor Matthew Maxwell Scott. I'm the Chairman of Development Control, and we'd all like to welcome you to County Hall. I just need to run through some of the procedures and housekeeping. One thing to note is because we're in this environment, rather than where we'd normally be, there may be some slight technical challenges. I know officers are working very hard to make sure those are overcome, but just bear with us if we have to rely slightly on technical expertise at the back of the chamber. There's no fire alarm expected, so if you do hear one, leave the building quietly and calmly. Exits are indicated by the green signs. As a new person, I'll have to follow one of you, so very calm, please. Please turn off any phones or tablets or anything, or put them onto silent, because please be aware that this is a public meeting and is being recorded and will be webcast live by the County Council. The camera will focus on you when you're speaking, unless you would rather this was not the case. So please say so at the start of your comments, and we'll pan out to show the whole room instead of just you. The County Council is happy to accommodate video and audio recordings should you wish to make any, so long as it doesn't disrupt the meeting. But don't make an audio commentary. I don't think any of you are likely to, but should you wish to, please don't. The County Council takes no responsibility for filming carried out by the media or individuals, and respectfully ask those that are filming to avoid filming children, but there aren't any here today, so that's fine. Moving on to item 1, which is apologies, none received. So that's easier. Item 2 is the appointment of the chair and deputy chair. This is just to note, but it's the appointment of County Councillors Maxwell Scott and Paul Rigby as chairman and deputy chair of the committee, respectively, for 21-22. So that's noted. Item 3, again, is just for noting. This is the constitution, membership, and terms of reference of the committee. Unless there's any queries on that, we just note it, please. Item 4 is the disclosure of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. Members should be asked to consider any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests they might have and disclose to the meeting in relation to matters under consideration on the agenda. If you do, can you be specific about the item in which you have an interest and the nature of the interest you're declaring? Are there any interests to declare? Nope, no interest to declare. Lovely, thank you. Item 5, minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of April 2021. This is to agree the minutes of the meeting held then. There are 4 members of this committee who were also present then, so they're probably the best judges of whether or not it is an accurate record of the meeting. But are we all happy with it? Them? Great. Thank you very much. They are taken, therefore, as approved. Item 6 is the update sheet. There are 2 items to note for that. Should I hand over to your coaches? It's 2 things. One relates to item, let's see, the skips, which is item 7, which is a letter written on behalf of the applicant. What I suggest is that we take a few minutes just to read that through. It relates to some of the points made in the paper. So perhaps you may have already had a chance to read it, but it's probably just worth taking 2 or 3 minutes just to make sure you've all read that through. And then the other item on the update sheet relates to item 10, which is the chipping waste water treatment works, which relates to the Environment Agency. I think we can come to that when we look at that item a little bit later. That letter does relate to the next item, which is item 7, Rossendale Borough application number LCC 2021 number 8, which is the erection of new building and formation of hard standing area for use as a site for the sorting and recycling of skip waste, Heightside Farm, Todmorden Road, Bacup. Jonathan, over to you, and good luck with the IT.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try my best. So I'll just go on to the first slide. So this is Heightside Farm, which is located off the A681 Bacup to Todmorden Road. So if you just turn to the slide, I'll try and point out. So that's the application site there. And that's the A681 road there, which is the Bacup Todmorden Road. There's Bacup Town Centre there, so you can see there.
Jonathan, I think it's quite difficult to hear you.
Okay,
I don't know if that's the angle of the microphone.
It's because you're talking away from the microphone, so I'll have to try and do it.
If you can raise your voice a bit, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
So you can see from the slide there that the site's located in the rural area outside of Bacup Town Centre. So this next slide shows the site in a bit more detail. So you can see there the area edge red, which is just in the centre slide there, which is just to the or forms part of the complex of agricultural buildings at Heightside Farm. And again, there you can see the A681 road running sort of southwest northeast through the site, with Shinyford School located off that road, plus the nearest properties, which are located about 200 metres from Heightside Farm itself. So again, this is a photograph of the site where you can see the nature of the farm and the surrounding area. You can see the surrounding area is comprised of a number of agricultural sort of upland fields and the surrounding farm buildings at Heightside Farm itself, with the access to the A681, which is that track there, and the nearest properties are located off the A681 as well. So this slide shows the applicant's proposals. So the large building you can see there, that's a recently erected cattle building, which is that building there. So what the applicant's proposing is to extend that on one side, which is this small building there, and that's a building that will be used for the purposes of sorting and screening skip waste, which is imported to the site for recycling purposes. So again, on the plan view here, you can see there the large rectangle is the existing cattle agricultural building, and then to the right is the building that the applicant is proposing for the purposes of sorting skip waste. And what he would do there will be the area there will be used for emptying skips out onto the floor of the building, and then around the outside, in that area there'll be a series of bays or other skips where the recycled materials will be put into. So there'll be a bay or a skip for wood, one for metal, one for plastic, one for hardcore, and that's how the recycling process would work, mainly by hand, but using some farm machinery for the purposes of moving materials around. And then there'll be an area at the rear of the site, which is that area there, which would be an open area used for storage of skips and HGVs. So I've now got a series of photographs just showing the site. Unfortunately, they're taking on a bit of a misty day, so they're not the best photographs, but hopefully they'll be enough to show you the nature of the site. So you can see there in the centre, that's a large building that's recently been constructed as an agricultural building, and the proposed building for the recycling use would be an area to the just to the right of that building, just in here. So you can see there the nature of the surrounding activities, which are a normal sort of farm site with silage storage and other equipment and cattle buildings. And again here you can see there the existing farm building there on the left-hand side of the photograph, and then there's the area to the right which will be used for the new building for the recycling activities. So this slide shows the access from the A681, just showing the width of the road and also the current condition of that access itself. As you will see from the maps and photographs, this site is located on a farm site in open countryside. The policies of the Rossendale core strategy seek to locate most development in the main urban areas unless a requirement for rural location can be demonstrated. This site is located outside of the defined urban boundary in the countryside area would therefore be contrary to policy 1 and 10 of the core strategy. Whilst the development would assist in securing the recycling of waste as required by... Right, sorry. Okay. Whilst the development would assist in the recycling of waste as required by government policy, this proposal would conflict with the policies of the development plan designed to ensure the proper location of development, and is not considered that there are any reasons why this site has to be located on a farm site. The character of the development is not considered, sorry, I've lost my place, is with the outside storage and skips and HGVs and general character operations would not be acceptable in a countryside location. In addition, the site is accessed via a single track access road that is shared with a public footpath, and therefore it's considered that the movement of HGVs along the access track would be detrimental to the safety and amenity of footpath users. If I can turn now to the letter that formed part of the update sheet, which was put before you earlier. So you can see there that the agent on behalf of the applicant has raised a number of points in relation to how the use will be carried out and controlled. The comments of the agent and applicant are noted, particularly the measures to control litter, which it is considered would have some positive benefit. However, it would not address the planning policy issues in reason 1 as set out in the report. For those reasons, it is recommended that planning permission be refused for the reasons set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Does anyone have any questions for officers on this? No? I think, well, in that case, the recommendation is to refuse. Show of hands whether or not we accept that recommendation. You've got us all. Lovely. Thank you very much. Item number 8, filed by application number LCC 2020-0043. It's the extension of timescales in condition 6 of permission LCC 2016-140 to allow grading and restoration of bund by 31st of December 2021. So at Reams Hills Farm, Mythock Road, Wheaton. I think we should all now know what a bund is, but it was a learning process for me anyway. But Jonathan, if you could present this, please.
Good, it's worked. Right. Thank you, Chair. So Reams Hill site is a tourist recreation site located north of the M55 near Blackpool. It includes a campsite and a lake used for wakeboarding and paddleboarding. And that's the application site there. This is Reams Hill Farm site here. So that's a lake there that the applicant uses for recreational and sporting activities. In 2015, planning permission was granted on appeal for a screen bund in the land edge red. The bund construction using imported waste soil was commenced in November 2017, and under condition 6 of the planning permission should have been completed by February 2020. At the time of the application, the applicant considered that more material was needed to complete the bund and therefore applied for time extension until the end of December 2021 to complete construction. So the next slide shows an air photograph of the site, which is a bit more sort of helpful to you. So again here, you can see the area used by the applicant for the sort of wakeboarding and paddleboarding activities. And there are also various chalets and caravans on this site as well. So land edge red is the area that he's using to construct this screen bund, and the intention of that was to provide a sheltered area to provide some shelter for the camping and caravanning activities on this site. So that's the access there from Mythock Road, and then there's a haul road down here, and the bund is being constructed within the area edge red there. So the permitted dimensions of the bund are around, the height of it is between 2 and 2.5 meters high and 30 meters wide. So these photographs now show the bund as has been constructed. So this is a picture that was taken last autumn on the areas of the bund that the applicant at that time had had completed. So you can see there that at that stage the bund was a fair bit higher than 2 to 2.5 meters high. It was more like 4 meters high. So it had exceeded the approved dimensions. So again here you can see this is a further picture taken last autumn. At that stage, this was the area of the bund further to the south. So this is the area which was at that time, which was currently being constructed. And again, this is a further bit, further area where that part of the bund has, or at that stage had been completed. We have requested that the applicant did a site survey which showed that many areas of the bund were over level, and the applicant estimates that enough materials have now been imported to allow the mound to be constructed to its approved dimensions, which will be carried out this summer. However, the mound will still require further shaping and landscaping and tree planting works, which will be completed by 31st of December 2021. You will see from the report that a number of recommendations have been received regarding HGV movements. These comments are noted, but as enough material has now been imported to the site to allow the mound to be completed, no further HGV movement should now be required. This matter is covered by condition 3. Subject therefore to the conditions set out in the report, the application is considered acceptable and recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yes, it's an interesting history on this. Does anyone have any questions on this item? Councillor
Yeah, I'd just like to understand. I mean, I've seen these type of applications before where these things just carry on and on. Have we not been monitoring this? You know, what assessment have we done in the past to ensure that this is completed on time? Again, it appears to be a retrospective application that is, you know, again, coming after the event and continues the misery of all the local residents.
Yes, if I can just respond to that point. I mean, what happened last summer was we did have complaints from residents about the number of HGVs that come to this site. So we did carry out a further monitoring visit at that time, which showed that there were parts of the mound which are over levels. So as part of that, we followed up with a request to the applicant to do a survey to ascertain how much material had been imported onto this site. So the survey showed that approximately 40,000 cubic metres material have been imported, which is the same volume as the whole bund is. So as part of that, we said, well, you've now imported enough material, therefore stop importing any further material and just regrade the material that had been imported to create the mound to its approved dimensions. So our monitoring activity did actually pick up the fact that the applicant had breached some conditions of the planning mission, but we put measures in place to ensure that this development now complies with the approved drawings.
Thank you, Jonathan. Councillor Murphy. I think you need to be a microphone on.
Wasn't able to discern from the application notes. What is the ultimate purpose of this bund?
The bund is really to give some shelter really to the camping and caravanning activities. If I just go back several slides, you will see here that the area edge red there is the bund itself, and the applicant plans to use this area as a campsite. So you might appreciate this area is quite flat, it's quite windy. So the applicant's idea behind the bund was to provide some shelter, which when this was first proposed, that was a matter that we initially had some concerns with in terms of the need for this bund. Of course, we did refuse it initially, but the applicant appealed and the planning inspectorate allowed the appeal. So our concerns in terms of the need for this bund were really overruled by the planning inspectorate.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kay.
Thank you. Can we just take into consideration from Councillor John Singleton's objection, I'm not saying object, but on the HGVs, the times, because in that area it's very congested going through the lanes, and it says from start at 7 in the morning. He's asking you to consider 10 o'clock. I think 9 o'clock would be appropriate time because of the congestion. I use that area and I know how bad it is, and it can take me an hour and a half to get here sometimes because if you go down those roads. So I'd just like to take into consideration, could we amend the hours?
Jonathan, over to you. I don't know to what extent this is ameliorated by the fact that there is already enough material there for the bund.
Yeah, I mean, that's a point really. I mean, under condition 3, and what we're saying is that no further material shall be imported, so therefore there should be no more HGVs to this site, other than perhaps the occasional HGV involved with bringing a bulldozer to the site for do grading works, or maybe vehicles coming from the point of view of like tree planting or that sort of thing. So really, the HGVs to this site have now finished. Therefore, the need for any additional controls and hours of working are really not there anymore.
I just know that if you get down behind one of those, it can put such a stress on the area. So for any vehicles going to that site, I would like that to be considered.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I think it's up to us to decide whether or not we find satisfactory the promise that there is no longer any more material needed. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. On page 29, where it says regarding the condition of the road service, this is not only for this applicant, I'm just asking for all of them. So if any applicants' works do damage A roads, who pays for that? Because in Heysham, we've had a big building, housing area, I know it's not to do with this, but the road's been damaged, and it's an argument between if highways pay for it or if the applicant. So I just wondered who pays for the damage of the road.
Thank you. Jonathan?
That's quite a hard question to answer, really, because it's very difficult to attribute where the damage has come from. You know, if the damage is occurring, say, several miles from the site, then it's very hard to pin the blame for road damage on a particular operator. If it was damaged at their access point, then I would have thought it would be fairly clear, you know, who's caused the damage, and therefore highways will be able to go back to the operator of the site and say, your vehicles have done this, therefore we want you to pay for the cost of repair. But where the damage is further away, it's very difficult to attribute blame, really. So that's how these things are normally dealt with.
Thank you, Jonathan. Andy, I think you've got something to add on that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as Jonathan has said, there should be no more significant HGV movements onto the site, so that's the most important thing to remember. But in terms of damage to highways generally and how do we control that, some of the members who were here for the fracking inquiries might recall that we put a condition on requiring a survey of the highway, indeed a video camera survey, and that video survey was to be repeated at regular intervals so we could benchmark the condition of the highway and monitor that over time. But that is for applications where there are very substantial numbers of HGVs, and we're trying to differentiate the damage from the HGVs at that site from all the other vehicles using the road, and that's sometimes a difficulty. So it's only really when we impose those conditions for a baseline survey that's regularly monitored can we discern whether the site is actually at fault here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Potter.
This isn't a question, Chair, it's more of a statement, but I assume we do them all at the same time, or would you like me to leave it till later?
As long as it's not too lengthy.
No.
Press on now.
Firstly, I'm glad of the explanation saying about how, given the HGV phase is now coming to an end, that would seem to solve a lot of the issues that people have had, the amount of HGVs and the time of which they come into the site. So that mitigates a lot of those concerns. So thank you for pointing that out. One thing I do know is it's interesting you say about control of noise on point 12 on page 36, because I've done a lot of work in construction zones for my employment, and actually it talks about mitigation of noise. Well, actually, you know, it's very difficult to mitigate huge bits of machinery making noise. I'm wondering, is it a standard practice that works like this can start at 7:30? Because I think some people would say that is quite early. I know constructions tend to start earlier and finish earlier, but is that a kind of a standard practice? It says hours of working here on page 35. Would that be a standard thing we would find acceptable?
Thank you. So the questions relate to hours of work.
Yes, those hours are normal sort of normal standard working hours, but we always have the ability to restrict them further if it's needed to protect amenity. If there are houses close to the site, then we could limit hours by condition to say a 8:30 or a 9 o'clock start time. But you'll see from the slide in front of you now, I mean, this site is quite remote, so it's unlikely that noise would disturb people other than the people staying on the Williamshill site itself.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Are there any further questions on this? If not, I suggest the recommendation is that planning permission be granted. Oh, Councillor, do you have a question? Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
I like the recommendations for the highways with the wheel wash. There's going to be a big improvements for that and the hard standing. I think that was necessary to put in. I'd like to move the officers' recommendations for approval with the conditions.
Thank you. So you're saying you want to, you're keen to be. Oh, okay, very good. Thank you. So the officer's recommendation is to grant subject to planning conditions. Are we all agreed? Show of hands, please. Or sorry, I'm not quite sure. Apologies, councillor Yates. What it is you wanted to?
Sorry, Chair. I moved it, but we didn't get a second. So if we're moving it with committee, we should have a proposer in the.
Okay, so you've moved it. Can I have someone to second it? Councillor Kay. Right. Thank you. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I think, yeah, good. Thank you. Apologies for that. 9. This is Pembrokeshire Borough application LCC 2020-0073. It's a planning application to vary condition 1 of planning permission 13/12/05/85 to extend the period of time to process the stone and restore the site to 31/12/2028. So 31st of December 2028 at Catlow East Quarry, Catlow Fold Farm, Southfield Lane in Nelson. Jonathan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just ask for some assistance, please, with the PowerPoint, because it's not coming up. Thank you.
Slight delay. Oh, I've got voted against, haven't I? No, there we are. Reasonable. I couldn't hear much, so it's just something for our any further volume can be broadcast out. Thank you. How am I? Am I clear? Excellent. Are we good to go now, Jonathan? Thank you.
Yes, we are. Thank you. Yeah. So this site is just quite a small stone quarry located just to the east of Nelson, which is accessed by a long lane off of Southfield Lane. So this is Catlow Quarry here, and this is the access road here, and this is Southfield Lane here, which is a rural road which links at various settlements just to the east of Nelson. This application relates to Catlow East Quarry, which currently benefits from a consent granted in 2012, which required the site to be restored by 31st of December 2020. And just to the west is Catlow West Quarry, which is an active quarry where the applicant extracts stone and transports it to Catlow East for processing and sawing. So just to explain that. So the red area here is Catlow East Quarry, which is the area that this application relates to. Then to the west is the applicant's current quarry, which he work stone from and takes it to the East Quarry for the purposes of the storing and processing, and he produces a range of paving slabs and sort of natural stone products which are used for the maintenance of historic buildings and other sort of conservation work. So this is an air photograph of the site. So again, you can see Catlow East Quarry there, which is the red line area, and then to the west you can see the various bits of current working, which is the applicant's existing main quarry area, and then you can see this Southfield Lane here, with the access track here, and the nearest properties are located just at the junction of the access track and Southfield Lane, but they are quite some distance from the quarry itself. So this plan here just shows a layout of the site itself. So you can see there in Catlow East Quarry the various buildings and plant that the applicant uses to process and manufacture different stone products. So it's mainly a sort of a shed used for sawing equipment, another plant that's used for shaping stone or doing other manufacturing processes. And then to the west, you see there, that's the applicant's current main extraction area. So this slide here just shows the East Quarry. So this is the restoration proposals, which is a sort of combination of different after uses, some woodland planting, some agricultural grazing, and some sort of scrubby areas. And as part of that, the applicant imports some inert waste materials, which is used to level off some of the previous working areas. So you can see there on the left-hand side with the red contours, that's an area where inert waste will be imported just to cover up some of the previous working areas and to provide a more of a level sort of contour area rather than the old cliff faces which were left as part of the quarrying operations. So there's now a few photographs of the site. So this is a view of Catlow East Quarry. So you can see there the scale of the operation. So it is quite a small scale quarry which produces limited volumes of stone, which you can see there in terms of various paving stones and slates which are used for various conservation and building uses. And in the background there's bits of plant and stuff that the applicant uses as part of that overall operation. Again, this is a further view of the quarry, just showing a bit more detail from another view. And in the background, you can see areas which have been restored on the flanks of the old working areas, which have been planted or left to naturally regenerate with trees and scrub. This is a similar view here. And again, this is a view of the applicant's main building, where he cut stone to produce a range of different paving stones and roofing slates that you can see stored here. So this is a further view of Catlow East Quarry, looking from the western side. And this is the applicant's main current working area. So this is the area where he currently works stone, and then that stone is taken through to the application site for processing purposes. So this is a view of the access road from Southfield Lane, looking towards the quarry. So the actual quarry is located in this area here behind the stone wall. This is a view of the entrance to the site, and then this is the access by the junction with Southfield Lane, showing the nearest properties to the site. And lastly, this is a view up Southfield Lane, where you can see the character of the existing highway network. So this application relates to Catlow East Quarry, which is the area used to process the stone that is extracted from Catlow West. The plan mission for Catlow West requires all working to be completed by 2026, and therefore the applicant requires a further time extension for Catlow East to ensure continuity of a location to process the extracted stone. It will be seen from the slides that this is a very small scale quarry with limited environmental impacts, and the processing activities will continue to be screened by the surrounding land levels. You will see from the report that a number of applications have been received which relate to traffic and other local environmental impacts. These issues relate to compliance with the conditions of the existing permission and should not affect the determination of the current application the issues raised are being addressed by the operator currently. So therefore, subject to the conditions set out in the report, the application is considered acceptable and is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Do we have any questions for officers on this? Councillor Pope.
Thank you. Again, this is a retrospective application, and basically it appears from comments, representations made, that they are working outside the allowed time. There's increase in HGV traffic. Do we not monitor these type of things? You know, it appears to be a continuation of problems, and by extending it to 2028, we're just going to increase those problems unless we monitor them properly.
Thank you. Yes, I think that'd be useful. I appreciate it's not necessarily relevant to our decision, but how these things are monitored, I think, is of great interest to the committee.
Yeah, sure. If I could just comment on that. I mean, in terms of the first comment about the retrospective nature of the application, the current planning mission expired in end of December 2020. So we actually applied before it expired. So it's not really retrospective. I mean, the current planning mission has elapsed now, but he did apply before it expired. So that's an important factor, I think, for you to consider there. In terms of the other issues, in terms of the breaches of planning control, there are some issues on this site which we have discovered as part of some of the comments which have been made by residents in terms of the number of vehicles and the use of crushing plant on the site. And we have raised that with the operator, and we are currently dealing with those issues. They're not matters which should really stop you dealing with this application this morning. Those issues do mainly relate to Catlow West Quarry as well, which is a separate site with its own separate planning mission. So that's an important factor, I think, for you to consider also.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question really relates to item 14 on page 53, which is control of noise and dust. My experience of sites like this, it's that when mitigation is done the machinery, it's the process that's the problem, not the machinery. And I'm just wondering what mitigations can be put for the breaking up of stone and the construction.
If I just jump back a few slides to the overall plan, it might be of help. So, I mean, what happens on this site? I mean, it's quite a small-scale activity. There's no blasting on this site or any other activities that really make that much noise compared to a normal quarrying operation. The stone is removed by an excavator and then taken to the shed, you know, for processing. So it's important to consider the noise impacts in that regard, I think. Clearly, things like sawing the stone does make some noise, but it's important, I think, here to consider the distance between the actual processing site and the nearest properties, which is quite some distance, as you can see from the slide here. So really, noise impacts, I don't think, should be too much of a consideration. The main issue with noise will obviously be from HGVs coming past the properties rather than from the stone extraction activities themselves. So in terms of the noise from HGVs, it's obviously very hard to limit that other than controls on the numbers and also hours of working. And that's what we sought to do through these conditions.
Thank you. Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Chair. Reading the application from the start, I was a bit worried about one or two things, but they've been well covered in the conditions at the back. So we're saying that I'd like to move the recommendation for approval with conditions.
Thank you. So I'd like to second. Councillor Kay, thank you. We all agreed that the planning permission be granted subject to conditions. Are we, Councillor Pope, are you abstaining or? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. The final substantive item, which is item 10, Please note this is the update sheet which relates to the Environment Agency, which I know officers will come up to discuss, but this is Ribble Valley Borough application LCC 2021 number 4. It's the construction of a new wastewater treatment works, access track, bridge, 3 culverts, new outfall, partial demolition of existing works, and landscaping 4 kiosks and widening / modifications to access road. And this is land adjacent to Chipping wastewater treatment works, Longridge Road in Chipping. Jonathan.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just trying to get the PowerPoint to load up. I've got the same problems last time.
I think.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this first slide shows the application site, which is to the south of Chipping Village, which is located off of Longridge Road, which is the road that links Longridge with the Chipping Village itself. So you can see there, that's Chipping here, with Longridge Road running down through the site there. The application site is the area edge red here, which includes the existing wastewater treatment works, which serves the village, plus also some land to the south, which is the area for the extended or new site. So this slide shows the site in more detail. So in the centre of the site, in the area edge blue there, you can see the existing wastewater treatment works. And then the application site is the area edge red here. So you can see there Longridge Road, which is the road to the west of the application site, with Chipping Brook following the western boundary of the site. The nearest properties are located at Goose Lane Cottages, which are off Longridge Road. So that's these properties here, which are about 100 metres away from the site itself. There are also some further properties, Dairy House, which is these properties here, which is slightly further away. So again, this is an air photograph of the site. So you can see there the nature of the surrounding land, which is just agricultural pasture land, used for cattle grazing and sheep grazing. So Chipping Brook is the line of trees, which is on the western boundary of the site, along here. And then in the centre of the site, that's the existing wastewater treatment works there, where you can see the tanks and other infrastructure which are currently used to treat wastewater from this area of Lancashire. And then to the north, you can see there the access road from Longridge Road, which is the current access to the site, which would be improved as part of this application. So you can see there also Goose Lane Cottages, which is a old dairy complex which has been converted to, I think, about 15 dwellings. Plus also there's some further properties to the west there. This slide here shows the applicant's proposals. So the area edge blue in the centre of the slide there, that's the existing wastewater treatment works, most of which will be demolished as part of this development and replaced with a new wastewater treatment works on land to the south. So you can see here, this is the new infrastructure here, which is comprised of a range of tanks and other treatment infrastructure, which is designed to treat wastewater to a higher standard than is currently the case. So the current works was built in approximately 40 years old, so it's of quite some age, and it's also failing to treat wastewater to the quality standard, which is required by modern environmental protection legislation. So therefore, a brand new works is required to allow compliance with those water quality standards. So you can see there in the bottom left-hand part of the slide, you can see there the new access proposals, which would use the current access to the site, which will be improved, and then there'll be a new access road built to link the new site. The current access road is quite small scale, and of course, to build this new treatment works would require quite a few HGV movements. So therefore, the applicant considers that the current access road isn't really suitable, and therefore a new road is proposed as part of this scheme. So you can see the new access road here, skirting around the site here. So that road would involve, I think, 3 trees being removed, plus approximately 130 metres of hedgerow, which would be replaced as part of the landscaping proposals for this development, which I'll come on to later on. So this is just a cross section here through the proposed site, where you can see the nature of the plant that's proposed, plus also the effect of the landscaping, which is quite an important issue as part of this development. So the highest part of the new plant will be approximately 8.2 metres above ground level, which will be the inlet screens, which I think are these bits of plant here. So the rest of the plant will be lower than that, but there are still some quite significant bits of plant as part of this proposal. So this slide here just shows some cross sections through the most significant parts of the plant. So on the left-hand side there, you can see the inlet screens. So that's when wastewater comes to the site and it passes them to a series of screens to remove debris from the wastewater to stop contamination and problems with the infrastructure downstream. So those bits of plant there are roughly 8.2 metres high. So that's the highest part of the plant. And the reason for the plant, or that part of the plant being that high, is for 2 reasons. One is to raise it out of the floodplain level, because this site's in the floodplain of the Chipping Brook, and it's also to ensure that there's a hydraulic gradient through the site, so the applicant isn't having to pump water back up to new levels after it's been through each part of the system. So it goes up to the highest level at the start of the plant, and it runs by gravity through the remainder of the plant. And that's the reason why the initial part of the plant needs to be at 8.2 metres high, to maintain that flow through the site without any additional pumping. So you can see there, the next slide shows the SAF area, which is basically settlement tanks. So that's, sorry, that's wrong. First my drawing to check this last night. The SAF area is the aeration tanks. So that's where air is passed through the wastewater, which is the main treatment process as part of the works. So those tanks there, you can see, they are roughly 4.5 metres high. And then coming on the tanks on the left, that's the primary settlement tanks, which is the area in the centre of the site. And those tanks are roughly 6.4 metres high. So that gives you some idea of the scale of plant that's proposed on this site. So I've now got some slides showing the landscape proposals. Because this site is in the Forest of Bowland AONB, and therefore landscaping is quite an important issue given the location of the site. So the applicant's proposing two sort of belts of planting around the site that you can see. There's one belt here and a further belt next to the Chipping Brook, and they will be planted up with a range of native tree species, which was designed to provide adequate landscaping for the site. Clearly that will take some time to mature, but in sort of about 10 years after the site's developed, that should provide an adequate level of landscaping for the site. Normally, it would be the case that you would want to have some sort of screen bunds around the site, but of course, in this case, given the location of the site within the floodplain, bunds aren't really a possible option, because the bunds would prevent the Chipping Brook from following its normal course during flood conditions, and therefore would create other flooding issues which wouldn't be acceptable. So this slide here just shows the landscaping of the access area and the existing treatment works. So within the current treatment works, most of the plant will be demolished and removed from the site. There are 3 current settlement tanks, which are all sort of trickling filters, which the applicant can't remove because the material within them is has some difficulties in terms of them being removed. So what we've agreed with the applicant there is they will man soil against the side of the tanks, and that will then be landscaped and seeded, which will help to mitigate their impact. So these are the settlement tanks here. You can just make out the round structures here. So they will have soil banked against the sides of the tanks, but they're only quite low. They're about, I think, roughly 2 meters high. So they're not large structures, but the landscaping would be designed to try and help those retained features sort of become part of the landscape once the site's restored. And again here, you can see the access road here with hedgerows replaced as part of those works. So I've now got a series of photographs showing the site. So this is the access from Longridge Road to the current treatment works. So as part of this proposal, the access would be improved. So you can see there the nature of the current access is just a single access track. So what the applicant wants to do here is just to widen the access onto Longridge Road by widening on in this area here. So part of this hedgerow would disappear to provide access to the field, and then this access will be widened and surfaced in concrete to improve the access to this site. So these slides show the proposed extension area. So in the background there, which are the white buildings, they're Goose Lane cottages, which are around 100 metres from the application site. So the area proposed for the extension is roughly this area here, with the current works in this area here behind these trees. So you can get some idea there of the visual impact of the works and the kind of land that this would relate to. Again here, this is the view looking from the footpath, looking northwest with the Bowland Fells in the background. So behind you can see Parlock and Fairslate here. And this is the existing treatment works here. There's one building on the site currently, which is roughly 8 metres high, which is that grey structure there. So that gives you some idea of the scale of the new works compared to the current treatment works. So the new works will be in this area here. So again, this view's a bit closer. So you can see there the existing treatment works here, which is behind these trees here. So the new works will be built in this area here, next to the brook here, which you can see on the left-hand side of this slide. So the trees alongside the brook will be retained. And again, this is a view looking the other way from the previous photograph, looking south. So again, you can see the Chipping Brook there on the right-hand side, with the site for the new treatment works there and in the field, with Longridge Fell in the background. So this is the view of the current treatment works here. So you can see there, these are the trickling beds that I referred to earlier. So these structures would be retained, but there would be soil banked against the outside to provide an adequate level of mitigation. But the other structures here and here will be demolished, and the old works restored along with the fencing. So this application raises a number of issues in relation to landscape, flooding and local amenity. So firstly, in terms of landscaping or landscape more generally, this site is within the Forest of Bowland AONB. So paragraph 170 of the MPPF requires that major development in such areas should normally be refused, except in exceptional circumstances and where the 3 tests set out on page 79 of the report can be satisfied. In this case, the development is required to provide essential wastewater services to the local area and to ensure that the discharges from wastewater treatment meet modern legal standards. It is therefore considered that there is justification for this site in the AONB, and therefore the 3 tests in the MPPF are satisfied. The new works would by necessity be larger than the equipment it replaces, but it's considered that the site is capable of being adequately landscaped. In terms of flooding, the new site is located within the floodplain of the Chipping Brook. Whilst the EA do not have any fundamental objection to the principle of this scheme in this location, they are still reviewing the applicant's flood model, which has been used to predict the exact impacts of the development on the floodplain. The EA's final views are still awaited, and therefore planning permission should only be granted once the EA have confirmed that they are satisfied with the model outputs. And there's a further update on that in the update sheet, but basically the EA, they haven't yet completed their assessment of the applicant's models, therefore you would still need to defer consideration of that to us in the event you're willing to accept this application today. In terms of local amenity, the new site is not materially closer to the nearest properties than the existing works, and the new treatment infrastructure should be more effective in containing noise and odour than the existing aged plant. The site would also be subject to a permit from the Environment Agency, which would control such matters in more detail. Therefore, subject to the Environment Agency confirming that they are satisfied with the flooding issues, and subject also to the conditions set out in the report, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. So a question from me straight away relates to the Environment Agency. If we were minded to accept officer's recommendation here, how would it work in terms of the granting of delegated powers to you? Is that a codicil to this? Is it a condition, or do we just agree amongst ourselves to that? And my understanding as well is that if the Environment Agency come back and say they're not satisfied, that this would therefore have to come to our next committee meeting on the 21st of July.
Thank you, Chair. Well, what we're asking is that the committee delegates authority to officers to sign off the application, subject to, and that's the important word, subject to the Environment Agency being satisfied. If the agency are not satisfied, then planning permission can't be granted. And we would have to look again, the applicant would probably have to look again at the scheme and come back at some future point to the committee. But the key thing is subject to the agency being satisfied. If they're not satisfied, then planning permission can't be granted.
Thank you. And does that delegation of powers, can we just sort of tack that on to the end of our decision, or is it recorded in the minutes? So it might benefit this really.
It's part of the recommendation, Chair, so it will be recorded in the minutes.
Thank you. Do we have any questions on this? Councillor Yates.
I understand all that, what Andy just said. Will it mean that no work will take place until the Environmental Agency have assessed it and come back with a full statement?
Thank you, Councillor Yates. Yes, the planning permission is subject to that So unless the agency are satisfied, we cannot issue the decision notice and no development can commence.
Thank you. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Chair. The one bit that's curious to me is about the ecology, because obviously there's the county officer does say that obviously a lot of these things are unavoidable, and particularly some of the, because I think as a council and as a committee, we should be looking at any development trying to improve net diversity and biodiversity in an area, because it's not just about fields. We want to make sure that whatever we do can actually increase the living environment around it. So do you believe that the improvements in water quality will offset the damage being done to trees and things like that, that actually over a long term, a greater number of species and a better number of species will be improved by this development?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Potter, for those comments. I think the first thing to say is that this development, in terms of the losses, they're mainly in terms of 3 trees on the access road and also the hedgerow. There would also be some loss of ground nesting bird habitat. If I just come back to the slides, you'll see there that this is the field that's being affected, and there is some some assessment that the field might be used for lots of nesting lapwings and other ground nesting birds. And obviously the use of this site for treatment works would remove that habitat. But as part of the landscaping works, there is quite significant hedgerow planting being proposed, and also the tree planting. So whilst there will be a loss of some kinds of habitat, there will be some benefits and other sort of habitat gain. So in terms of the overall benefits of the site and also the improvement of water quality, which is an important issue in terms of ecology, we believe there's a net overall benefit in terms of ecology.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murphy.
I've talked to a number of local residents in the vicinity of the area, obviously given that this is in the Ribble Valley, and my concerns relate to the highways issues identified on page 85. And I need to emphasise that Longridge Road, I don't describe as a C-class road. You want to go and have a look at like what a C-class road actually is, and this kind of abuts onto a lack of a rural roads policy on behalf of Lancashire County Council. And you'll note that there are 2,600 vehicle movements over a two-year period, which if you do the calculations, and you realise that that's a lot every day. It's a lot every week during this construction period. And my concern is in the conditions that we've put in place. We haven't really kind of I think done enough in terms of addressing the issue of vehicle movements, you know, onto and from this site, and also to identify the potential erosion to what is effectively I mean, it's described as a C-class road, but it's not in the best of condition. And I'd have liked to have seen something about monitoring the impact on the condition of the road going forward, and identifying the need for improvements and maintenance to that stretch of road. And if our vehicles are going to leave and enter the site en masse, maybe we could consider some kind of convoy system, so it's less disruptive on rural road traffic in the vicinity of the site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murphy. No, we should probably note that the highways haven't objected to this, but Jonathan, can you offer any succour to Councillor Murphy?
Yes, I mean, there was a further point in terms of condition 10, which is asks for the traffic to be controlled along with the traffic management plan. The applicant, as part of his application, have submitted quite a comprehensive management plan for traffic, because they do acknowledge that this site is in a rural area and is accessed by roads that wouldn't normally be suitable for large numbers of HGVs. But of course, in this situation, it is very difficult to mitigate the impacts, because the equipment has to get to the site somehow, and that road is really a bit can be used. So as part of this application, they have included a sort of routing plan which aims to ensure that traffic only uses the main routes, or just the route from Longridge to Chipping, to ensure that traffic doesn't use other sort of more minor roads. And they've also included things like more restrictive hours on HGV traffic and other means to try and address the impact of traffic on the local highway network. But other than that, it's difficult to know what more can be done, given the nature of the roads in the area.
Councillor Murphy.
I'd like to follow that up in the context of the forthcoming Haweswater application. you know, I haven't mentioned rural roads out of context. You know, the points that I make are extremely relevant to large parts of the Ribble Valley area, which are going to be severely disrupted by large movements of large numbers of HGV vehicles, you know, for years to come. I mean, I don't think I'm in a position to ask for an amendment to the final proposal, and for the imposition of tighter conditions about kind of examination of the condition of the road in the vicinity of this development, and continuous monitoring going forward. But I hope that if the Environment Agency do object, then as part of this delegation to the officers, that further consideration be given to the impact on highways in the vicinity of this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Those comments I'm sure will have been noted by officers. Do we have any other? Councillor Yates.
Right, thank you. I agree with the councillor there. We could ask the highways if they'll monitor that stretch of road. We don't need to put it down as a condition. And I'd like to ask the officers if they could do that. And on saying that, I'd like to move the recommendation for approval, subject to conditions, and the report coming back from the Environmental Agency. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Yates. Do I have a second of that? Would like a second? Councillor Potter or Councillor Rue, either. Are we all agreed then to grant subject to those conditions? Yeah. With subject to the Environment Agency, absolutely. And I think I'm sure I would be grateful, and no doubt other committee members would be too, if you could keep us posted on that, just when we get the response. Yeah, Andy.
Sorry, Chair, can I just clarify Councillor Yates' comment? So are you requesting that the traffic management plan has an additional part inserted into it which requires the applicant to monitor the condition of the road surface?
I don't think that was the proposal. I think it was merely to sort of to note, wasn't it?
What I was looking at, but I can't put words into the councillor's mouth. That's for him to decide. But for the highways to have a look at the situation on the road, because it's been raised in the planning committee that there is a potential problem there, and could they have a look at it, at the state of the road, and monitor it over the next few weeks to see what the increase of traffic will be when the site starts.
With respect, Councillor Yates, that puts a burden on the Highway Authority to carry out the applicant's work. I think it would be preferable to put that burden on the applicant to carry out that monitoring and report to the Highway Authority. Yeah, so I think we can alter the traffic management plan to put the burden not back on the applicant to monitor the condition of the highway surface. That would be my recommendation for dealing with that.
Do we feel the existing traffic management plan allows for that without amendment?
Well, Jonathan's just saying actually we can add an additional condition rather than putting it in the traffic management plan. So we can add additional condition which requires the applicant to monitor the condition of the highway surface.
Does that seem reasonable to all members? Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
So
this is a
yes.
Amendment to it.
May have jumped the gun slightly there. Need someone to propose and second that amendment? Yes, please. Could Councillor Yates, you happy to propose? Councillor Murphy, second. Lovely. Are we all agreed? Oh, great. Thank you. Are we all agreed on that amendment? Do we need to go back over the substantive decision then? I don't think we've got everyone's hand. Oh, we do.
And I feel like we've needed more clarity. You should have thought about this beforehand.
Forbearance of these challenging times. Kerry, just to be clear, do we need to go back over the main decision? Is that all noted? Yeah. Accepted. Lovely. Thank you very much. Moving on, therefore, to thank you to all officers. To item 11, this is delegated decisions. That's for the committee to note. Unless there are any comments. If not, item 12, urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. So just the final item, item 13, which is the date of next meeting, which is Wednesday, the 21st of July at 10:30 a.m. I hope in Cabinet Room B, which will be a little bit more intimate. And I hope we will have been fully liberated, mask-free, and enjoying the freedoms of our vaccinations. Thank you all very, very much indeed. Much appreciated. And stay safe.